The forest, community of living ones, more than just the trees that grow, a harmony of lives abound, a growing, changing melody, each part in tune with all the rest. If we would enter in this dance, we'd take our cue from who knows best. The earth is wise, her balance true. She always knows just what to do. When fire rages through the trees and leaves the forest charred and black, the knowing earth, she slowly heals. Her cycles bring the forest back. A forest still, though charred and black, the ordered beauty never gone. There's much to learn from nature's ways, a wisdom here to build upon. The earth is wise, her balance true. She always knows just what to do. So let us honor those who stand, their roots so deep within the ground, and all of those who dwell within the shelter of these standing ones. For we all share this living earth, relations all we surely are. And when respect becomes our creed, a better life for all by far. The earth is wise, her balance true. She always knows just what to do.
John, we just saw a big load of lumber coming down the road there. Logs. What does that mean? What's happening to the forest in Saskatchewan?
From what I hear, there's a big onslaught happening, and there's more logging activity than has ever happened before, is what my friends are telling me. And so I'm curious to go and try to investigate and talk to people and find out just what is happening. The other thing that they're saying is that it's being very unregulated compared to past logging. For instance, like one of my friends who's a trapper said the government would always come in and inspect after a company finished a cut block and not let them log in another cut block until they had done this one properly, and he said there's none of that happening now. So. Or maybe very little of that. Anyway, this is what it's going to be good to go and check out.
A lot of people in southern Saskatchewan don't really know the true value of the forest. What would you say to them to describe the forests in northern Saskatchewan?
Well, it's just phenomenal, all the available resource that's in a forest. And then besides the fact that it can be cut down to make lumber and paper and things like that, it's aesthetically really beautiful, and there's a whole gamut of products besides trees that are in there that we're just starting to learn how to use and benefit from. So I also think the forest is like a kind of a place for people to rejuvenate. I guess we think of that when we think of our summer cabins or something, or going to the lake. People kind of know intuitively that it's a way to get sort of refreshed and rejuvenated from our lives, to spend time in the forest. And then I guess the other thing is the forest helps us to produce oxygen, and it's a carbon sink for helping to deal with particularly CO2 in the atmosphere. So having a healthy forest is a way to help mitigate some of the problems of global warming, is what I think.
When you look forward 25 years from now, what kind of a forest do you want to see in Saskatchewan?
Well, I hope that I would like to see a forest that was managed to truly be in a way that was truly sustainable. And I guess as soon as we start saying managed, we're always referring to, or always implied, is the fact that it gets logged. Like if we look out here right now, we can see these like vast areas have been logged. We see a few spindly trees sticking up. And there's the sign of the Provincial Northern Forest. So right from here on, we're going to be going by cut blocks. Like, I think we have to be thinking like 200 years or 300 years into the future, and so that we're taking products out of the forest, that when we have to take products out of the forest, and we do it, I do think it's okay to take some trees for lumber and paper, that we do it in a way that allows the same health of forest as we had when it started, like 200 years before or 300 years before. And so I guess, like, just very simply, we wouldn't be taking quite as much out of the forest as we are now. And also, I would like to see large areas of the forest left where the forest was just allowed to go on its own without us interfering by taking products out. Because I have a sort of a simple theory about logging. Like we look over here, we can see it again too. All the big trees were taken out of that area, and they represent organic material that has been removed from that ecosystem, like from that little plot or from the big cut block. And that system might have to work for 300 or 400 or 500 years to reproduce the amount of organic material that's come out of it, because it's tied up in the trunks of the trees, but they're supported by the nutrients in the ground. And those nutrients in the ground are there a lot because of the thousands of years of trees that have fallen onto it. So all of a sudden now we take those trees out and we start to rob the ecosystem of nutrients. And I think we don't witness the consequences of that, even maybe in our next generation. But for our future generations and for the grandchildren and on, the forest won't be as healthy. And my fear is that then somebody's going to say, oh yeah, this doesn't grow forest very well anymore, so now let's make it into farmland or parking lots or real estate or something. And that'll just seem to be the only thing we can do, because we've already destroyed this amazing thing which was there, which was the Boreal Forest. And like nature put the forest here, and it's sort of evolved to be maybe the best ecosystem to be in this particular place in the world, and I think we need to respect that.
Well, to begin a story, you got to begin where it started for me, right? When I started questioning it, so that you kind of begin to understand how I started to get involved in this. I came home. I've been away for a long time, getting my law degree and just getting my colonial education. And I came to a chapter in my new book, Nationhood Interrupted, about land. And my memory of land was fuzzy. So I thought, I have to go home.
I can't write a chapter on land when the memory of it wasn't clear. So I put my things in storage. I came home, and what I came home to, I was stunned. I was stunned. The land has changed so much that I couldn't even, in my memory, the freshwater streams that had been there were gone. They were devastated, contaminated. I was shocked. I had been away about 15, 20 years, and I even went looking for the cabin that we lived in when we go hunting in the winter and the different times, and even that was burnt down. And I asked my dad what happened, who burnt this down, and he said it was CERM, Saskatchewan Environment, or DNR as they were called, Department of Natural Resources at the time. And he said DNR had been going around burning down the hunting cabins. And so that what motivated me to begin asking questions, and I was seeing that the trees were being removed. And I started asking Saskatchewan Environment, what is going on here? And we started meeting with them, and they told us that the Indian Act chief, the chiefs of the three reserves called Witchkin Lake, Pelican Lake, Big River Reserve, under agency chiefs, tribal council called AC Forestry, were consenting on our behalf without ever talking to the title holders or the hunting peoples that these trees were going to be taken. So we started meeting with Saskatchewan Environment and telling them we were not being notified. We were not being told that this destruction was consented on our behalf. And then during one of the meetings last year in September, it was identified there was a conflict of interest. But Saskatchewan Environment is still moving ahead with the activities and the removing of trees. There was a conflict of interest happening on so many levels with AC Forestry that I'm stunned that the trees are still being taken. In fact, it's increased. The activity has increased. The question here is, the chief and councils, do they have the authority and jurisdiction to consent for hunters and trappers and people who are protected by Treaty 6? Do they have the authority to consent on our behalf off reserve to lands that extend into our hunting lands on all of Treaty 6? And I don't think they do, but Saskatchewan Environment is acting as if they are. And the other thing here that's an issue is we never are extinguished our right over the resources. If you look at the treaty documents and the treaty discussions and dialogue, nowhere in there does it say we gave up the resources. The resources were silent. And if you look at colonial law, when something is silent, it's never given up. It's never extinguished. So the resources, the jurisdiction and authority over resources still reside with the Indigenous people. And within my nation, the Nihio people, the jurisdiction and authority over land and water reside with the women, because we carry the water ceremonies and the land ceremonies. And there's a disturbing trend happening under the Indian Act. The Indian Act is an imposed system of governance and leadership. We never consented to that. We never consented to that structure of leadership, and yet this is what the colonial government wants to sit with and meet with constantly. And when you take a look at that leadership structure, it's problematic to begin with, because the oppression that they have to function under in terms of the funding that they get impacts their position in that power structure. The government has so much more power. All of Treaty 6 is unceded, unsurrendered land, and a lot of colonial people, the settlers, don't know their treaty history enough to know that none of the treaties are unfinished business. They're unfinished business. There are things that are not implemented fully under those treaty terms and promises, and this colonial government is acting under their presumed sovereignty with the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is very much utilized every time we've gone to court to try and assert the treaties, except it's disguised and called as the underlying title of the crown.
What's the message to people? How can people rally? What can they do?
I think the biggest thing that they can do is stand with Indigenous people, get themselves informed about climate change and how the Boreal Forest is being impacted. And part of climate change is the deforestation that's happening and the Boreal Forest being affected by it because the heat is increasing globally. It's affecting the growth of the trees in the Boreal Forest. Even if they do the logging right now today, the destruction is generational. It's generational. In my lifetime, I'm not going to see those trees come back. Maybe in my grandchildren's. But with the rate that the heat is increasing, it's going to stunt the growth of the trees because they're impacted by the lack of water that's being distributed onto the land. And also, we're seeing more and more insects that there's an explosion of them because they're not dying off the way that they naturally would during the winter. And the other thing that I'm noticing out on the land is that the things that were readily available 5-10 years ago in terms of the medicines that we need, in terms of our health, we're having to search further and longer. They're more difficult to find. And also, the wood tick. We see the wood tick in the southern part of Saskatchewan and in the Treaty 4 lands, but they're moving further and further north. Again, that's impacting how we move on the earth into the forest to get at the animals and the fishing and the water. Even the water is impacted when you take the trees because there's no shade and there's no moisture being kept to the land. And when you take the trees, you're taking the shade, and it impacts the waterways. And we're seeing less and less, fresh water streams flourishing because of the clear cutting.
First thing we have to do is stop logging, because it's beyond. It's got to be fixed, and it's got to be stopped first of all. And we have to reverse some of the decisions that have been made. Some of these four-season roads have to be taken out to replace that and put it back to a forest. If we want to talk about rehabilitating the caribou herds, that's the first thing we got to do. We got to do actual physical things instead of just flying around and finding a caribou and capturing it and put a tag on it. Let's actually start doing something about it. That's the first thing that's got to happen. But as far as we got to start talking to northern people and see what they want to do. Give the ownership of northern Saskatchewan back to the people of northern Saskatchewan. Give them the option of what they want to see in their communities. Because, I mean, we have some of the best fish in the world in northern Saskatchewan, and we're shipping it to Winnipeg, when that fish should be processed in northern Saskatchewan, all across the north. We could supply the world with the best quality fish in the world. And we could generate way more revenue by doing that than selling some tourist lodges to the Americans and people from the South to come up here and bring a few tourists. They don't even hire, and in most cases, they don't even hire locals to work in their fish camps. In Dory Lake, there's three outfitting camps on Dory Lake, and not one of them hires local people. And they're all people from the South. So what does that tell you? See the difference doing it the way I'm doing it. I fish 3 nets a day. The old days I had to have 30. Keep them from freezing, so you gotta put them in coolers. Whitefish are easy to take out. It's pike that are. Jackfish aren't very cooperative.
Probably is. I wonder what he does with his fish guts in place.
Yeah. You do this every afternoon?
Every afternoon. I call it slabbing. You're just taking the fillet off the body, and then I finish it off. Now I consider this filleting. You rib them. That's the rib bones there, and then there's a line of bones right along here. It's called the Y bones. You got to make a little cut there. And that's it. All the bones, it's all boneless now. Then you just run your finger down, and you can feel if you've missed a bone. Yeah, then I wash them, then I package them, and then put them in the freezer.
So lots of logging on the road up to here.
Oh.
Man, oh man, what do you think of that?
Boy,
Jeez.
it's terrible. And it's worse if you go north.
Yeah,
Over towards Bluestone and north end of Dory here. It's horrible. And what really bothers me is they're logging lots of areas where they're logging just hardwood. But they're logging in areas where there's small spruce coming up, and the popper of the nursery for these spruce, and they're just destroying all these spruce for the sake of taking those popper. You know, it's just like years ago when they had forest management, they wouldn't log an area like that because of that reason. They laid off all their foresters in Saskatchewan. I don't think we have any left, and they let the logging companies, they let the management companies police themselves. So they're doing their own forestry work. So they're supposed to be looking after the forest for us, the ones who are logging. So the logging now, like this winter, is I don't know how much more, but it is way more. Like there's trucks, like it's unbelievable how many trucks are on the road. And then they have every kind of trailer you can imagine. They have these super trains, like 2 full-length log trailers. They've never been allowed to do that before. But obviously the government has given permits for it, right? Trapping and hunting around here is just like there's nothing. There's nothing. There's no place for the animals anymore. And there's nobody in government. Like when Chris Moe was environment minister, I actually talked to him about what's going on up here, and he just wouldn't even comment. Like my old trap line at Rabbit Hill, there's nothing left. It's gone. It's gone. From Muscate to Muscate, they've taken everything. Like, and the biggest thing is the waste that they're leaving in the bush. Like they're high grading. And there's nobody to police it because they're supposed to be policing themselves. Resource officers are told to mind their own business when they say something to their boss. Because this is not your mandate. Like you walk through the cutovers, and I have. And I can just about walk entirely on merchantable wood after they've logged and gone. I found areas where the buncher had left bunches,
Yes.
in big areas, and just left the whole area. They're all laying there. And literally, I haven't seen a moose for a year up here. Why? And the only thing we can, as locals, the only thing we can connect to it is the more logging that happens, the less wildlife we have. There's just nothing, there's just no place for them anymore. This is their community consultation. They came here, the only way I found out that they were coming is I found out they had booked the local community hall here. That's the only way I knew they were coming. They never did any ad campaign or anything like that telling us they're coming to show us their plans. Well, the plans that they actually had come and put up there were already approved. So it was a matter of, yeah, this is what we're going to do, see you later. There's none of this coming, and then when they do come and say, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do, in a lot of cases, they change it anyway afterwards without telling anybody. You never want to overwash fish. You just wash the flavor right out of it. The color will disappear. You just want to make sure you get all the slime off, all the bloods off. I noticed this year on 2 of the lakes that I fish, a lot of the northern pike are skinny, like they're unhealthy, like they're not eating. The bigger fish are all eating, but it's like there's no little feed, you know what I mean? Like when you fish for a week and find a fish that size, only one in a week that had something in his belly. Like, why is that? That's the biggest concern I have, is there is very few rabbits, very few fur-bearing animals. Like, it's very troubling to me. From what I used to see when I was younger, and my dad, from what he's seen, and this is northern pike, the dark stuff. And then this here, this is the whitefish. It's kind of a whiter meat. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. And then this is the bourbon.